Next up, Mr. Repay is the city of Crown Point talking about cheaters on Edgewater flooding mitigation.
So the city of Crown Point's here for, well, as it says, it's for really just to be cut the thunder here is undersized culvert for underneath a railroad. They need to engineer it so that it's more suitable, so that they don't necessarily experience flooding in the Edgewater subdivision and adjoining areas.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Eric's here from Structure Point. Will be doing the presentation.
And he'll introduce himself and show us a Bears insignia and giddy up.
Put on my glasses so I can see.
We all do that.
All right, like we're ready to roll. Eric Wolverton with American Structure Point. Also have John Kennedy here with American Structure Point, Greg Bukowski, City of Crown Point, and Doug Wright also with the City of Crown Point. So we're here tonight to present on the Edgewater subdivision flooding mitigation project, or so it has been coined. Here you see an overall map of the area. North is to the top. You can see the I-65 is labeled and 109th Avenue. Main Beaver Dam Ditch, which is the receiving body of water for this area, is up on the north. The location of the subdivision is has the red star there. So that subdivision was started to be developed in 2002, correct? Some of the other development that you see on the screen as just west of I-65 and to the south, that was developed back in 2004. Flow for this area comes from that subdivision up along 113th Avenue, flows through this subdivision through an old railroad corridor where there's an existing bridge where the superstructure has been removed. There's old deteriorating vertical concrete abutments in that area, and flow continues to the north and eventually, as I mentioned, in the main Beaver Dam Ditch. So blow up of the subdivision itself, the dash yellow line indicates the abandoned Erie-Lackawanna Railroad corridor. The blue line indicates the direction of flow. This picture points to the restriction that's in question. That's a picture of the old vertical railroad concrete bridge abutments. So this area has experienced flooding due to this restriction of the railroad bridge. The city, and within the last year or two, has come to gain control of the right of way where the railroad used to exist. The next few slides indicate some of the flooding that's occurred in the subdivision due to this restriction.
Let's keep building more houses though.
This particularly is in late September 2019. There were 33 homes that were impacted by the floods. Several homes received 3 to 4 feet of water in their basements. Also impact 4 roadways that had to be closed, impacting obviously access to emergency personnel, et cetera. Here are a few more pictures.
Who did the original engineering on this?
Yeah, let's go back to the aerial and say how much of this water was coming in, and this is all recent, and you have all this water from these new developments going into the hole that is the railroad restriction. I mean, that's not new, obviously. So, okay, I can't cuss in this, so, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it was obviously there a long time ago. And as I mentioned earlier, the city didn't control that right away. So I had no ability to go in and remove that bridge and upgrade.
Right, but they had the approval rights of building all the houses, correct?
Yes, yeah. And those subdivisions were designed in accordance with the stormwater ordinance at the time, and back in the early 2000s.
Duly noted.
So the request before you tonight is for preliminary engineering, which would include some minor topographic survey so that hydraulic modeling could be done. And then this would also include full design and the bidding of the project. The request as it stands is a 80-20 split, 40 20,000 or 10,000 from the city, 40,000 requests from the board. As I mentioned earlier, this would be to replace the existing deteriorating railroad concrete abutments with an adequately sized box culvert. Of note, this area is identified by NERC and their high priority trail corridor as a future area for the Erie-Lackawanna Trail in the area. And I know there's always questions regarding estimated construction cost. Obviously, that's going to be dependent on the modeling, the size of the culvert, the amount of removal that's required in this area. The railroad embankment is in excess of 20 feet in the air. So it'll be a lot of residual removal of that embankment in order to replace the culvert. And so we're currently estimating that to be between $750,000 and $800,000.
Okay, Eric, can you go back to the aerial, please, that shows I-65 again? And then Dan, I'm gonna ask you a question, is that we've already talked over the last, I don't know how many years, about the west to east flow down in this part of the watershed, that Beaver Dam ditch went under there. Now I'm just hearing that there's another culvert under I-65 going from the subdivision on the west to where the star is. Is that how I'm understanding that?
I'm assuming.
So now we have another under I-65.
But Big Beaver Dam Ditch is the largest tributary.
I understand that, but my question is, how many more are down there that all of a sudden, when you keep building more and more subdivisions and you're forcing stormwater underneath I-65? I'm just wanting to make sure that we're ahead of these as opposed to having more of these, oh, shiitake moments.
What's the size, Eric, what's the size of the culvert underneath 65 here, that if you know?
So, and then one of the things that you guys can help us out with is how many other culverts are under I-65 in the city of Crown Point, because we have all that growth there and economic development, which is I'm a big fan of, but it's all going east. And this is all ending up in the deep river. We just need to make sure we see how this thing is setting up, how many of those points are available, and whether or not there can be additional storage capacity to be able to not just keep forcing this stuff further down the path. That's kind of what the goal is here. So just to bring that up, not a quiz, but it is under premise of what other culverts are under I-65, because I was always under the impression, at least this is just for me and I'm old, is that Beaver Dam ditch. And that's a big one for me under the premise that all the growth that goes, west of there all the way to Indianapolis Boulevard is all going through that hole. So it's important that we continue to understand that, how that works, because that has to be managed, because once it crosses I-65, it ends up eventually in Hobart and Lake George. And those are important things through the whole aspect of this, but specifically on I-65, because we can't have issues there. Thank you. Gentlemen, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I guess your question about this individual culvert that you're asking about, I would imagine, Eric, that was probably updated when they did the widening of I-65 just 4 or 5 years ago, correct? I would imagine. Theoretically, yes.
That bridge is on NDOT's list to update to. It has a DES number to do the one that goes over 113.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, I had a question right here too. You mentioned modeling. What is the area that's going to be encompassing this modeling that you're working toward, this engineering study? What area are you covering? Because right now and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, we were also studying the area for the comprehensive look at Beaver Dam Ditch. So is that included in that study in the modeling, or is Eric's area separate from that? And then secondly, the hospital just opened up, I think about a half mile, 3/4 mile south there. Is that area that's being developed now with a couple of larger subdivisions and residential areas, is that going to be impacted by this?
Will it impact this
Will it
location?
impact?
Eric, you want to go first? I hate this position that I'm in right now.
We could stand up.
I really don't want to.
Oh, then quit complaining.
See, it is a quiz. Here's, I'll answer the question.
Yes.
Well, we did big beaver dam ditch, that's what we did. If this is a culvert that's running to it, eventually getting to it, I don't know if it hooks in with Niles ditch or beaver dam ditch eventually. But up to what he's modeling, that's gonna be up to them.
Well, we were setting it up because that was what I thought was the only, west to east was Beaver Dam Ditch. Now I'm finding out there's more in there.
There's several culverts that run underneath I-65.
Well, again, we
Ross,
had the conversation.
for example, let's go up north, Rosser Lake.
Building more houses.
Rosser Lake runs from Lake Station underneath I-65. It's a 36, 48-inch culvert.
But if they're gonna approve stuff, which is good, and that's their prerogative, that we just need to make sure that we
I
focus
agree.
on this and make sure that they don't go, oh, by the way, there's this 1910 railroad crossing that's blocking all the
Just-
water.
Just also like lateral 6 runs underneath
Absolutely.
I-65, but those aren't the major ones, those are smaller ones. This seems to be one of the smaller tributaries
But
in this area.
in those pictures you showed from 2019, that's substantial.
I agree.
Has
That's a major flood there, guys.
since 2019, have you had other major rain events that flooded that zone?
Not to this level now.
So what prevented, because we've had major events in the last 5 years.
Probably a combination of things, I mean. Just how the crops that are in the area, I'm sure affect things, whether it's
crops?
corn, yeah, whether it's corn or soybeans.
So that the
So
field to
runoff,
the
surface
south,
runoff you're talking.
Yeah, surface runoff, yeah.
the field to the south that's there when it's corn, causes more blockage than when it's beans, so, look at that. This field, depending how it's planted, the runoff goes this way, and the culvert here, and then the culvert here may be plugged based on corn stalks after picking versus
So
cutting beans.
maintenance is an issue.
And then basically you're pointing to that empty field. Okay, if you go to the left on the other side of I-65, that used to be an empty field too. My dad lived over there and I knew. Oh, and now look, it's all houses. All that water's gonna be flowing. And we're not here to grill you guys. It's just a concern for us that as these things keep getting developed, problems like this are gonna crop up and subdivision.
And we just want to be ahead of them.
Yeah, we want to be proactive than reactive. So
Again,
if the box culvert needs to be bigger, it needs to be addressed.
Then we need to get in
Sure,
on
but
it.
future
Yeah.
developments are gonna have to
Yeah.
follow the existing, stormwater
Right.
ordinance that's in place, so they're gonna have controlled discharges. So,
Well, I respect that, stormwater ordinances, but they're only worried about this box and that particular property that comes before it. What we're talking about is the entire watershed. So when they approve it for that box, it might meet it, but it might create problems elsewhere. Same thing with even the farmer. I mean, if the farmer's creating havoc as it pertains to blockage, then that might be a conversation with that particular property owner. But the hole's not getting any bigger, so is it that, the hole, what is that? 109th, what's the street north of the field?
113,
So what about that culvert?
the culvert here,
Yeah,
that was just replaced by the city, it was upsized,
upsized.
because it was, yeah, it
We did that
was
one,
collapsed, it
We
was
did.
failing.
That was the one that was
No,
left.
You did this one on the other side.
No, you were on the other
We
side.
did the other one.
Oh, the other one?
That was
I
done
thought it
in
was
the
over
last
there.
6 weeks.
Thank you.
So can I follow? I don't think so what is the area that's gonna be encompassing this model?
So we'll pick up at the culvert that's underneath I-65. Yeah, and determine that size slope, so you know what kind of discharge is coming from there, and then from that point, model up through the restriction.
How big is this structure under 65?
That we're not sure. I can get that information from NDOT.
That could be part of your study and
That would be
recommendation.
part of it. Absolutely.
Right, good.
Because everything south of 113th is going through the star hole.
Correct.
How much to the west? What is the size of the watershed to the west that comes into that culvert?
I don't have that
The
information.
split where it goes to
I
Nile.
mean, how are we gonna calculate the amount of water coming in if we don't know what how much the tributaries are gonna contribute.
It's a great point that they're gonna factor into their.
The
next
maximum
round.
amount of flow that can go through the
Through that
culvert,
culvert.
through that culvert, right?
Any other questions,
Yes, I
gentlemen,
have
these
some
young men?
questions.
Yes,
When
sir.
did the problem start surfacing? So if it was designed in 2002, how many years did they live without a problem?
Well, the subdivision began in 2002, but it was built in phases. So the biggest event was what was in 2019,
Is it fully
after,
developed?
after full build out.
Is it, so it's fully developed?
Yes,
And have you had an incident since?
not this magnitude, no.
For what magnitude?
The picture.
I mean,
No.
has anybody been flooded since 2019?
I asked.
No.
So how do you know that in 2019, there wasn't some type of anomaly with an obstruction when this is just maybe not even necessary work or priority work? If you have no overtopping and you've had no flooding in
Right,
6 years, what makes it so urgent to do now?
that structure is completely deteriorating and will fail.
Thank you.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Spending a lot of time talking about what's going on I-65, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.